Good evening and welcome to another Into the Terminal Dark Mode. Today we're going to be talking all about subscriptions, everyone's favorite topic about Red Hat management and getting started with Red Hat. So let me bring in my screen and we'll just jump right on in. There we go. Okay, so the first thing is we need to work with a uh, application called Subscription Manager. And Subscription Manager is batch completion aware. So if you have the bash dash completion RPM installed, if you hit tab a couple times anywhere within the command of Subscription Manager, it will suggest some next steps for you. So what I'm going to do to start off with, this machine is unregistered, so I'm going to do a Subscription Manager register. To register your subscription, it'll ask you for your username and password. This is the username and password that you use for authenticating to the Red Hat customer portal. And just in case anyone doesn't remember what the Red Hat customer portal is, it is this location. And we talked in an earlier episode about creating one of those and getting subscriptions added to your account. So if you've not don't recall doing that, um, check out episode 6. All right, later on in this episode, we'll talk about how you could get away without providing your username and password at registration time. All right, so at this point, the machine is collecting some what we call system facts, things like the CPU and memory and a few other things to upload to its record at Red Hat. And that's going to determine how many subscriptions are required to fully entitle this machine. And it will also get a unique system ID assigned to it. That's what that UUID there is. And lastly, it'll get some default repositories defined for it, at least if it's Red Hat Enterprise Linux 8 or later. We're waiting for this to finish up. You may also recall from an earlier episode where we installed machines. That was episode 7. Um, you can also provide this information as part of your installation process so that when the machine boots up after installing, it's good to go. So, this is if you've installed a machine and neglected to register it, this is how you can get it taken care of. And I see 8th Doctor has joined us. Hello, 8th Doctor. All right. So now that it's completed, we just want to check out what's going on with it. So I'm going to do a subscription manager status. And this will tell us the status of our subscriptions. Now mine is going to be a little bit weird. Right. Notice that it says the overall status is disabled. However, it also says the content access mode is set to simple content access. Simple content access is a setting that you can apply to your account that will basically allow all systems to register to your account. And then it's up to you as the administrator to take care of managing how many are actually there and useful. Simple content access will do some other nice things too, like if it notices a system has not checked in a while, it will remove that from your subscription allocation so that you're not having it counted against your subscription limits. If you're interested in more on Subscription Manager, sorry, not Subscription Manager, subscriptions, uh, we'll be doing an episode later that talks about insights, and it's one of the tools in there to help you manage your subscriptions. Okay, but we're talking about individual machine subscriptions today. So the machine is registered, and as part of that registration, it also was added to a couple of repositories. So if I do a subscription manager repos dash dash list dash enabled, it's going to go up to the Red Hat subscription repository and check against the CDN to look for all available subscriptions that this machine could possibly have, or sorry, all available repos that this machine could possibly access using its subscriptions. And then once it's got that list, it's going to narrow that list down to only show me those subscriptions that are active on this system. And the differential between them is going to be pretty big. But because we have to get that huge list in the beginning, it takes a couple minutes to execute. All right, so you can see that just by registering, I got registered to the two standard base repositories for RHEL 8, which is the RHEL 8 base OS RPMs and the RHEL 8 AppStream RPMs. All right, but I mentioned that there could be more repositories. So what if we wanted to install Ansible on this machine? Well, if I do a DNF install Ansible, it's going to check all the software in those two repositories, the AppStream and the base OS, and it should come back with an error message telling me that that package is not available. All right, boom. No match for argument Ansible. And that's because Ansible is provided by an additional repository of RPMs. So what I'm going to do is a subscription manager repos list, and we're going to look at the full list. Okay, so it'll take a couple minutes to get that full list. Well, maybe 60 to 90 seconds. While we're waiting, Eighth Doctor asks how ephemeral are machines counted with simple content access? It's pretty painful for ephemeral machines with the traditional mode. Um, if I remember correctly, it is daily. So if they don't check in for an entire day, they get removed. And then if they check back in again, they'll be added back automatically. But that's how it does it. It's by day. All right. So if we're looking at this list of all repos this machine could subscribe to, there's a lot. Like if I scroll through this whole list, it's probably 50, 70 repositories. It's too much for us to actually look through um, in our time together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that list and I'm going to grep it for Ansible. If you've not seen it before, the -I option says case insensitive. So if the word Ansible has a capital A or the whole thing is capitalized, it'll also show up as a match to my grep. So again, we're going to take probably about 60 seconds to get that entire list of available repositories, and then it's going to set it to grep, and then just show me the lines that matched my query. All right, so these are all the ones that have Ansible in their name. And the one that I want is the latest Ansible packages. So I'm going to grab Ansible 2.9 for RHEL. I need to find it. There we go. So I'm going to grab this repo ID, and let me just grab the actual string of the repo ID. Okay, so once you've found the additional repository you want to enable, it's subscription manager, repos, -- enable, and that repo ID that we pulled out of our list. All right, so this is going out to the Red Hat subscription manager and saying, hey, I want to also add on this repository of software to my RHEL box. And once this is done, I'm going to rerun that DNF Ansible install command, and we'll see what it does. Eighth Doctor asked about caching. It's a good question. I don't know. Probably something silly like we want to make sure that if anybody adds extra packages or adds extra repos that you immediately see it. That would be my guess. All right, we're almost there. It's enabled the Ansible 2.9 for RHEL x86-64 RPMs. I'm just waiting for my prompt to come back. All right, so now you'll recall when I did the DNF install for Ansible before, it said no package available. But now, when I do a DNF install Ansible, we'll notice a couple of things. One, is it's going to download the repo information for the Ansible 2.9 for RHEL x86 RPMs repo that's new to the system. So now it's got a list of all the packages available. The next thing we'll notice is that it was successfully able to find Ansible RPM. And if we look at the repository that it's going to pull that from, it's the one we just added to our system. But it'll also pull all the dependencies and things it needs from the other configured repositories if that's where they live. All right. So after this, Ansible will be installed and ready to go on my machine. Now, Ansible is kind of an odd one. We provide it as part of Red Hat Enterprise Linux subscriptions for the sole purpose of running RHEL system roles, which are automated Ansible roles that you can use to perform different system administration tasks, as well as executing playbooks that come out of OpenSCAP scanning or insights for remediation of configuration of your machine. Those are the only three things that we provide Ansible for as part of a RHEL subscription. So if you're doing things outside of that with that Ansible, you should maybe consider doing an Ansible subscription instead. All right, so now if I run Ansible -- version, there we go. It's installed and ready to go. All right. Why don't we transition to the second part of the show, which is where we take a little bit deeper look into subscriptions. All right. So a little bit deeper look into subscriptions. I mentioned that you can um, subscribe your machine without providing a username and password. And what we do for that is create what we call an activation key. An activation key is a string that you will provide as part of your registration with the right options to Subscription Manager, and it will take care of authenticating this machine is allowed to register. So let me stop sharing my terminal for a second, and I'm going to start sharing my customer portal page. And Eighth Doctor will recall that time that I did not share my screen, and I'm sure he will not let me get away with that this time if I were to make said mistake again. Okay, so what we're looking at is my account on the Red Hat customer portal. And what we're going to do is we're going to go up to the subscriptions tab up here in the topmost navigation bar on the left side. And it's going to tell me some snapshot information about the subscriptions that I have on the machine. But what we're interested in is this manage link over here on the right hand side of our options. And underneath that pull down is a activation keys dialog. And we will call it in honor of Eighth Doctor. So this is just a string, and it's one that personally I like to make easily typable because I'm going to have to type it into a script or a command line or somewhere. But it might be better served as a utility of like what this is for. So, for example, maybe this is for workstation systems, or this is for high availability systems, or this is for web servers or dev environment. Okay. So the service level. So this is if we are looking for a subscription to attach to this machine, what type should we look for? If you don't have any preference, it will use the system purpose that we described in our installation episode to try and have a good match for the subscription. So I'm going to set it to no preference. It's going to look at the system purpose and some other things, try and choose the best match that it thinks for this system. Auto attach enabled, that's what actually got my RHEL 8 repositories selected by default. So for this activation key, I'm going to tell it that when machines register for it, they should get high availability repos and a RHEL server with smart management. And let's do the RHEL Developer Suite. Okay, so we'll create that. And it'll take a minute and then return me back to the original screen where it showed all the activation keys. All right, so here's my in honor of 8th Doctor activation key. And currently there are 3 subscriptions allocated. So that's the RHEL Smart Management, HA, and Developer Suite attached to it. Um, and then to use this activation key, so let me stop sharing this screen and I will start sharing my terminal again. There we go. So to use that activation key, I'd use a subscription manager, uh, register, dash dash activation key, string of my activation key, and the org identifier. So on the activation key page, there is also a numeric number at the very top that says your organization ID is this. So I would just plug that in, and it's like a 6-digit number. So I'd plug that in as well. So having the activation key and the org ID together with my registration, that's what shows Subscription Manager that this system is authorized to register to this account. All right, so after I do this, actually, I'm not going to really do it, but tell you what would happen. So after I do this, if I do a subscription manager repo list, and we get that enormous list of repositories of software that are available, I would see that the high availability software is now in that list because this machine is entitled to use it. I would see that the developer suite is now in that list of repositories because this machine is entitled to use it. And then I would normally get my RHEL 8 repos because I assigned a RHEL 8 or a RHEL subscription to this guy too. All right, if I really wanted to do this, because the machine's already registered, I could also throw on a dash dash force, which says, I don't care what you used to be, register again. So that's one where if you're fighting registration or you're in a weird state where you can't unregister for some reason, you can force a re-registration with something different. All right, I mentioned earlier that when we were doing the installation episode, I put in my subscription or my account information so that the machine would register as part of its install. You can also supply an activation key as part of that installation. And that'll be stored in your Kickstart file that gets generated by the installer. And now you can use that Kickstart with the cached uh, activation key and organ information to stamp out more machines just like it and have the right configuration. All right. So let's see. I think that's. Oh, one last thing is attaching a subscription to an already registered box. So we could do it this way and force a re-registration, but you can also go through the customer portal web UI to attach a subscription to a box. So let me stop sharing here, and we will share that customer portal window one more time. All right, and we go to a systems. This is our list of systems on the account, and mine is called RHEL. Here, let me just search for it. There we go. So it's pulling up the system information for this box. And we also took a quick look at this on episode 6 when we started talking about getting started with RHEL subscriptions. And so it's showing me some of the data that was captured from it, like it's how it was registered and when it was registered and a little bit on its subscription settings. But what I want to take a look at now is this subscriptions tab, because this shows me the subscriptions allocated to the system. Oh, and because I'm simple content access, it just kind of does what it does. So let me attach subscriptions, and it will show me my available subscriptions. Like, I want this guy to be a RHEL server, and I want him to have high availability, and maybe also access to GFS, the resilient storage add-on. And maybe that's it for this guy. So I will attach the subscriptions. And now if I go to this box and do a subscription manager repo list, I'll see the resilient storage repo show up, the high availability repo, and then my RHEL repos as well. And so, Eighth Doctor, you asked earlier, why don't we use caching? I bet you this is another reason why we don't use caching, because if somebody sets something here, we don't want the individual system to have to wait until its cache expires to be able to pick up this change. If we query live every time, it doesn't matter which way somebody adjusts its subscriptions. All right. So after I've made that adjustment, you can see on its list of attached subscriptions, those are all there. All right. So that's a little bit on subscriptions. So now is a great time for us to take questions. So if you have questions, just put them in the chat. While we're waiting for that, don't forget to like and subscribe and share if you are interested in seeing more content like Into the Terminal. Okay. Well, it looks like there are no questions. So if you guys do end up with questions after watching this episode, or maybe you're watching in a deferred method, we do monitor the comments on the videos and respond there as well. I have one from last night that I need to revisit on bootloader passwords, so I'll get that knocked out this evening. And tomorrow, we're going to be covering disk management. So we're going to add more space to file systems. We're going to create or add a disk to the machine and create a partition table and add it to our volume group. So that's what we're going to be doing in episode 8. We're going to be covering disk management. All right, everybody. Have a great evening.